धन्यवाद प्रणाम। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चना गौराङ्गे राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरि वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवै भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमः पङ्कजनाभाय नमः पङ्कजमालिने नमः पङ्कजनेत्राय नमस्ते पङ्कजाङ्ग्रे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। नमो ब्राह्मण्याय देवाय गोब्राह्मणहिताय च जगद्दिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. We'll do Kirtan now. भजहो रे मना श्रीनन्दनन्दन अभय चरणर वृन्द रे। भजहो रे मना श्रीनन्दनन्दन अभय चरणर वृन्दरे दुर्लभ मानव जन्म सत्संगे दुर्लभ मानव जन्म सत्संगे तर होए भव सिंधुरे तर होए भव सिंधुरे सीता तप बत बरीसना यदि न जामिनी जागिरे सीता तप बत बरीसना यदि न जामिनी जागिरे विफल से विनु कृपन दुर्जन विफल से विनु कृपन दुर्जन चपल सुखलभ लागिरे चपल सुखलभ लागिरे निधन यौवन पुत्र परिजन इते कियाचे पर तीरे निधन यौवन पुत्र परिजन इते कियाचे पर तीरे कमल दल चल जीवन तलमल कमल दल चल जीवन तलमल बजहु हरिपद नीति रे भजहु हरिपद नीति रे श्रवण कीर्तन स्मरण वंदन पाद सेवन दास्य रे श्रवण कीर्तन स्मरण वंदन पाद सेवन दास्य रे पूजन सखीचन आत्मनिवेदन पूजन सखीचन आत्मनिवेदन गोविंद दास अभिलाष रे गोविंद दास अभिलाष रे भजहो रे मन श्रीनंदनंदन अभय चरणर विंदरे भजहो रे मन श्रीनंदनंदन अभय चरणर विंदरे Hare Krishna. We will continue discussing today Srimad Bhagavatam, ninth canto. Okay. Ninth canto, fourth chapter from the 15th verse, right? So, ninth canto, we have been seeing the various descendants of King Manu, right? So, they have. Sorry. Yeah. So we've been seeing a lot of, we have been hearing about the descendants of King Manu, and among those wonderful descendants of King Manu, some of them were wonderful devotees. They were wonderful devotees. They were pure devotees, and some of them, while executing their regular duties, their dharma, they actually also attained liberation, and they went back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is the reason why Canto 9 is also titled as Liberation. And amongst the descendants of King Manu, we will discuss about the one particular descendant called Nabhaga. Okay, so that was the discussion to the beginning of this chapter. Nabhaga had a son called Nabhaga. Okay, so this son Nabhaga was For many years, he was with he lived in Gurukul with his spiritual master. So then the other brothers of this Nabhaga, they thought maybe Nabhaga won't return, right? He might not return. So whatever wealth and property that was there of King Nabhaga, without giving Nabhaga, they divided amongst themselves. And when they divided amongst themselves, they did not leave anything for Nabhaga. So then one final day, Nabhaga returned from Gurukul after serving many years. He was serving his spiritual master. He returned from Gurukul, and as he returned, he realized that his brothers have not left him any share of his father's property. Right? Any part of the kingdom was not left for him. No wealth, nothing was there. So when then he asked them. He asked them for his share, and what they said is that your share of the property is our father himself. Our father himself is the share of the property that you will get. Then Nabhaga goes to Nabhaga and says, his father Nabhaga, and says, see, this is what my brothers are saying, that you are my share. You are my share of my property, and then the father says, no, I cannot be the share of your property. I cannot be divided like that. So uh, they are actually cheating you. They are actually cheating you. But I can tell you, there is a sacrificial worship that is going on, and if you go there, you can get wealth from the munis there. There is Angira Muni and other munis who are doing worship there. And if you go there and ask for from the sacrificial um, sh- um, whatever they get from the sacrifice, right? And whatever they earn from the sacrifice, that they can give you. And then the son follows the father, and he does that. The time he is about to get the wealth from the sacrifice that the munis give him, Lord Shiva appears, and he says, this belongs to me, right? You have to give it to me. Then he says, Nabaga says, okay, we'll go and speak to my father, and based on what he says, we can take a decision, right? So, and then he speaks to his father, Nabaga, and his father says, this sacrificial offering definitely, and the wealth that has come out of it definitely belongs to Lord Shiva. So it has to be given to Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva and the son Nabhaga, he actually agrees to that. He doesn't contend it. He does not say, I don't agree, right? So already he lost his share of the property that his brothers didn't share with him. Again, when the same thing happens, that he's about to lose this as well, but he doesn't oppose that. He says, okay, if that is what you say, then this goes to Lord Shiva. This actually extremely pleases Lord Shiva, and he says, okay, this should belong to you. This should go to you, and King Nabhaga, the son, gets that share of the sacrificial offering. And this is in this lineage. Um, King Ambrisha was born, right? So he was King Ambrisha. We have heard many times the glories of King Ambrisha. So this part of the this section of Srimad Bhagavatam that we will discuss today is about King Ambrisha, his glories, and how he has been an exemplary king, right? So a lot of times. when we get any kind of opulence, right? It can be material wealth, it can be fame, it can be anything else. When we get lot of opulence, sometimes it is very difficult to handle that opulence, right? People, we see people change, they transform, right? For bad sometimes, with lot of pride and lot of undesirable qualities. So this is actually what how we can see from the example of King Amrisha, having the in Srimad Bhagavatam there is description of what all what King Amrisha had, right? So we'll just see what all King Amrisha had, and in spite of all that he had, how he actually took to devotional service and how he is an exemplary devotee. So this is what we can see from the example of King Amrisha. The other thing that we can learn specifically uh, in this section of Srimad Bhagavatam is that lot of times as practicing devotees, we think my material desires are not going off. I still like very much, having material desires. I am somewhere caught with them. Somewhere I am feeling, I feel bad that because I am somewhere drawn to something which is not related to Krishna, which is not part of my Krishna conscious journey. But still, why do these material desires really kind of keep coming, keep bothering me? So, in this section of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will see how is that we can slowly get rid of these material desires, right? So, Srimad Bhagavatam here presents us an opportunity to understand how we can get rid of our material desires. I'm sure this is something of interest to understand how we can get rid of material desires and how we can learn from the great example of King Amrisha. Okay, yeah. So we'll start from the 15th and 16th verse. Okay. श्रीशुकोवाच अम्बरीशो महाभागा सप्तद्विप्तिं महिम् अव्ययां च श्रियं लब्ध्वा विभवं चातुलं भुवि मेने अतिदुर्लभं पुंसां सर्वं तत्स्वप्नसंस्तुतं विद्वान् विभवनिर्वाणं तमो विशति यत् पुमान्. Okay. Can someone read the translation and purport? Would someone like to read the translation and purport?
Hare Krishna, can I read Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, thank you, please.
Translations and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Translation. Sukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Ambarisha, the most fortunate personality, achieved the rule of the entire world, consisting of 7 islands, and achieved inexhaustible, unlimited opulence and prosperity on the earth. Although such a position is rarely obtained, Maharaj Ambarisha did not care for it at all, for he knew very well that all such opulence is material, like that which is imagined in a dream. Such opulence will ultimately be destroyed. The king knew that any non-devotee who attains such opulence merges increasingly into material nature's mode of darkness. Purport. For a devotee, material opulence is insignificant, whereas for a non-devotee, material opulence is the cause of increasing bondage. For a devotee knows that anything material is temporary, whereas a non-devotee regards the temporary so-called happiness as everything and forgets the path of self-realization. Thus, for the non-devotee, material opulence is a disqualification for spiritual advancement. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, in this verse, we see Srimad Bhagavatam is explaining the kind of opulence King Amrisha had, right? He was the ruler of the entire world. The description is that it consists of 7 islands, and it was The wealth he had was inexhaustible, unlimited, and he was so um, and there was so much prosperity. And this is the kind of wealth and opulence that King Amrisha had. And then what happened, for with such a wealth and such a kind of position, he was also the ruler of the entire world with such a wealth and such a position, but and it is like he was one of the very very fortunate few, right, to have that kind of opulence and that kind of position. In spite of all that, King Amrisha did not care for any of that, because being a devotee, he was a his consciousness, and he was placed, and his consciousness was in such a way, he had such elevated consciousness, and he was placed in the right understanding, where he understood all this wealth, all these positions, all this is temporary, right? he thought he thought it of like a dream, right? So what happens in a dream, so we experience many things in the dream. Sometimes when good things happen and we suddenly wake up, we think, oh, it was only a dream. Sometimes really bad dreams come in, and then when we wake up, we are very relieved. Oh, thank God, it is a dream. Either ways, it is not permanent. So King Amrisha is seeing all the wealth, all the prosperity, everything he had as a dream, as temporary. He didn't attach any importance to it, right? And since it is a dream, since he treated it as a dream, he knows what happens when we wake up. The dream comes to an end, and everything comes to an end. So that is how he was treating all this, right? And then the king very well knew that attaching importance to this actually moves one farther and farther from devotional service into the mode of darkness, right? So it is actually, one has to be very careful. Unless one is not careful, all the material wealth, opulence, power, position can actually corrupt one, right? So it can actually, instead of making one as a better person, instead of retaining one's good qualities, it can actually pushes into the region of darkness. So Srila Prabhupada says, in this purport, Srila Prabhupada brings a clear distinction. He brings a clear distinction as to how devotees respond to opulence and how non-devotees respond to opulence. For devotees, all the opulence, all the wealth is insignificant. And but for non-devotee, the more the wealth, the more the opulence, it actually binds them to this material world. There is more greed. We see people, we see non-devotees, the more they prosper, there is more greed, there is more desire to accumulate more. It is kind of, and then the attachment to that accumulated wealth, opulence, and all that goes on. So when the attachment goes on, it is actually becomes like a bondage. We get bonded to this material world, wherein we have this desire to um, um, earn more, accumulate more, enjoy more, live in this material world more. So it is a strong bondage to this material world, which Srimad Bhagavatam and scriptures say that is not a place for anyone, right? So it is actually not a place to be. It is temporary. It is full of miseries. But this is how the non-devotee actually gets bonded. And then when one is actually constantly absorbed in these thoughts of accumulating more, earning more, um, need to enjoy and attach to that, it becomes difficult for them to progress, mix any spiritual progress, because it actually all the time the thoughts, the consciousness, the priorities are clearly fixed in the in this material, material aspirations as such. And then the efforts and the priority one needs to give for spiritual advancement, if one is not able to give that priority, one is not able to make spiritual advancement. So somewhere it disqualifies a non-devotee or someone who is engaged too much um, into who is more attracted to these opulences. It actually becomes a disqualification for them to make spiritual advancement. Yeah, we'll move on to the next verse. वासुदेवे भगवति तद्भक्तेषु च साधुषु प्राप्तो भावं परं विश्वं येनेदं लोष्टवत् स्मृतम्. Okay, we can see how King Amrisha is looking at this wealth and opulence. Can someone read the translation?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Can I read this? Sloka
Please, Prabhuji.
17,
Thank you.
right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Sloka 17, translation by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai
Maharaj
Hind.
Ambarisha was a great devotee of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, and of the saintly persons who are the Lord's devotees. Because of this devotion, he thought of the entire universe as being as insignificant as a piece of stone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, right, that this is Maharaj Amrisha who is, in the previous verse, we saw his position, we saw his opulence, but in this verse, something much greater than that is his position as the great devotee of the Lord. And he was such a saintly person, one of the exalted devotees of the Lord. And for such a person, who is such a great devotee of the Lord, he saw the entire universe that he ruled, and and everything that he had, the entire universe was as insignificant as a piece of stone, right? So that is the conception that King Amrisha had. He everything, imagine everything, this unlimited wealth, universe, everything, he saw that as very insignificant and just treated it like a piece of stone. So very elevated consciousness, and this is how devotees see material wealth and opulences in general. Whatever is that, but it doesn't mean that he has no, he has he's given up on that, right? He's the ruler of the universe. He has all the opulences. And then the next verses we will see how he has used that opulence for the welfare of his kingdom, for advancing in devotional service. And he has not given up that wealth, but how he actually put that wealth in perspective, right? So as a practicing devotees, the takeaway for us is how we actually put in perspective the opulences we have. It could be wealth, it could be lot of skills that devotees are given. How do we put all this in perspective, that all this is used in the service of the Lord, and otherwise it is actually insignificant. Okay. The next verses are very, very important verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And um, Srila Prabhupada is actually seen to quote this very often. In many places, Srila Prabhupada has been quoting this verse, 18th verse, especially the first line, and sometimes even the second line. So this is a very important verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, and this verse is a is like a um an example. It's an example for all practicing devotees. From the example of King Amrisha, how they can use everything in the service of the Supreme Lord, right? these verses speak about how King Amrisha is using everything, all of his senses, everything in the service of the Lord, right? So that is why Srila Prabhupada also was quoting this verse very often. Okay, yeah, we'll read. सवै मना कृष्णपदारविन्दयोर्वाचांसि वैकुण्ठगुणानुवर्णने करौ हरेर्मन्दिरमार्जना दिशो श्रुतिं चाकारच्युत सत्कतोदये मुकुन्दलिङ्गालय दर्शने दृशौ तद्वृत्या गात्रस्पर्शे अङ्गसङ्गमम् घ्राणं च तत्पादसरोजसौरभे श्रीमत्तुलस्या रसनां तदर्पितये पादौ हरे क्षेत्रपादानुसर्पणे शिरो ऋषिकेशपादाभिवन्दने कामां च दास्येन तु काम काम्याया यतोत्तमश्लोकजनाश्रये रति. Okay. Yeah. Can someone read the translation in purport?
Will I
Shall I
continue,
read the
Mataji?
translation? Sorry.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna? Okay. Go ahead,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Okay. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Maharaja Ambarisha always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, his words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavana. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulasi offered to the Lord. And he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasada. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaja Ambarisha never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 7.1, the Lord recommends Maya Sakta Manah Partha Yogam Yunjan Mad Ashrayaha. This indicates that one must execute devotional service under the guidance of a devotee or directly under the guidance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not possible, however, to train oneself without guidance from the spiritual master. Therefore, according to instructions of Srila Rupa Goswami, the first business of a devotee is to accept a bona fide spiritual master who can train him to engage his various senses in rendering transcendental service to the Lord. The Lord also says in Bhagavad Gita 7.1, Asamsayam samagram mam yatha gnanasyasi tach shrunu. In other words, if one wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in completeness, one must follow the prescriptions given by Krishna by following in the footsteps of Maharaja Ambarisha. It is said, Hrishikena Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Bhakti means to engage the senses of the service of the master of the senses, Krishna, who is called Hrishikesha or Achyuta. These words are used in these verses. Achyuta Sat Kathodaye, Hrishikesha Padabhivandane. The words Achyuta and Hrishikesha are also used in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is Krishna Katha, spoken directly by Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam is also Krishna Katha because everything described in the Bhagavatam is in relationship with Krishna. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So, this celebrated verses is actually, we can see how King Amrisha is actually, Maharaj Amrisha is actually using everything in the service, all his senses in the service of the Lord. So while we started the discussion, we said, so how does a practicing devotee get rid of material desires, right? So how does that happen? So overcoming that constant guilt or constant bad feeling of having material desires, being drawn to those material desires, how does one get that strength to overcome that material desires? So King Amrisha is demonstrating here. What is that he's demonstrating is that we have to engage everything in the service of the Lord. So right from his mind, right, which is always meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord, his hands, his words, his sense of touch, his eyes, his legs, his sense of smell, everything is being used here. If we see the mind is meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord, the words they are describing the glories of the Lord. Hands are cleaning the temple, Lord's temple. See, imagine the emperor of the world, the you know someone who is ruler of the world, and for him he is using his hands that he has received by the Lord in by for cleaning of the temple, right? So it is like it is such a glorious service actually to be able to use our hands in cleaning the Lord's temple, right? So that is how he's been using his hands, and ears. His ears are also constantly engaged in hearing about the words spoken by Krishna or the words spoken about Krishna. So in the purpose, Srila Prabhupada says, words spoken by Krishna is Krishna Katha, and words spoken about Krishna is also Krishna Katha. So he's engaging his ears in hearing Krishna Katha. Srimad Bhagavad Gita was actually spoken by Krishna. It is Krishna Katha. Srimad Bhagavatam is about Krishna and his devotees. So that is also about Krishna and it is Krishna Katha. So he engaged his ears in hearing about Krishna, hearing Krishna Katha, right? So that is how he was engaging his ears. Eyes to see the deity of the Lord, right? To see the beautiful Archa Vigraha of the Supreme Lord. He has been engaging his eyes to see that beauty, which nothing comes close to that kind of beauty. And he has been engaging his eyes actually um see this wonderful form of the Lord in the form of deity, Archa Vigraha. And then touch, he has been using his sense of touch to touch the transcendental bodies of the devotees, right? So when he was holding the devotees, he was hugging them like we can see his grace Leland Prabhuji gives nice hugs to all the devotees who come to the satsang. Some devotees also said that when Prabhuji hugs them like that, that it kind of relieves them with from lot of suffering and lot of stress that they might be through, and it's actually very assuring, very very assuring. So King Amrisha also was actually using his touch sense of touch to actually touch the bodies of the Lord's devotees, right? And smell, his he was smelling the fragrance of the tulsi leaves that were offered to the Lord. That is how he was using his sense of smelling, right? Um, in the service of the Lord. And tongue, he was tasting the Lord's prasadam, right? So that is how wonderfully he's engaged his tongue also. We can see King Amrisha engaging his tongue by tasting Krishna prasadam. In legs, he the legs are used in the service of the Lord as he walked to the places, to the temples of the Lord, to the dhams, to the places where the worship of the Lord is going on, right? So and he engaged his head by bowing to the Lord, and all the desires he had, he was to serve the Lord, right? All his desires were to serve the Lord, and this he was doing all the 24 hours of the day. So the entire time he had, this was how he was engaging his senses and all that he had, right? So gradually, as we reflect upon this, so how this particular point that he was doing this for 24 hours a day. So as a practicing devotee, sometimes we can reflect how much of our time, how much of our efforts are going in engaging in the service of the Lord. How are we engaging in the service of Lord? What are we doing to be engaged in the service of the Lord, right? And how much of time is going in that? King Amrisha was engaging in 20, for the entire 24 hours duration of the day. Have we, and how much of, like, my spiritual master says, always that we have two pockets, right? One is Krishna's pocket and one is our pocket. So we do something for Krishna in the service of the Lord, and some things we keep for ourselves. So we have to understand what are those things that are going into our pocket, right? And uh, slowly, gradually move everything to Krishna's pocket, right? So it is this endeavor that actually takes us from somewhere from mixed devotion to pure devotion, right? So we are in the path of devotional service, but we are in a mixed devotion wherein we do some things. Uh, Depending on where we are on this journey, some of us do some things in the service of the Lord. We align our life in in service of the Lord, but to some extent there is also something that we do, which is not maybe aligned to our spiritual path, which is not aligned to our spiritual advancement, right? So it's somewhere in between. This is a form of a mixed devotion, and the endeavor is to engage all our senses and everything in the service of the Lord, and as and we will be moving towards pure devotional service, right? And King Amrisha didn't have anything for himself, right? And Srimad Bhagavatam is saying this is the way that we can increase the attachment for Lord and completely free from all material desires. So next time, when we feel guilty about material desires, when we feel guilty about things which we are not doing in line with our Krishna conscious journey, we have to endeavor more and more to engage our senses and ourselves in the service of the Lord. And this is what brings attachment in the right sense to the Lord, right? Otherwise, knowing philosophy and not having the right kind of attachment to the Lord, spiritual journey and the activities we do on this can become a sentiment, that we are doing it like a sentiment or a way of doing it without the real attachment. The real attachment and freedom from material desires comes from the service to the Lord. Okay, so that's what we have to understand and always endeavor, right? This is work in progress. It's a constant endeavor, right? Yeah. And in the purpose, Srila Prabhupada mentions, right, few things that are very, very important for a practicing devotee. Prabhupada mentions is that guidance is very, very important, right? So at some point in the journey, we might feel, okay, I have an understanding as to what I should be doing, how I should be doing my sadhana. Devotees, due to association of devotees, earlier association, hearing from the scriptures, there is some understanding, but that understanding itself is not at all enough. Itself is not at all enough. Srila Prabhupada is saying one should be under the guidance of a devotee, or the guidance of the directly under the guidance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but that might not happen directly. So one has to be under the guidance of a devotee, under the guidance of the spiritual master or his bona fide representative, right? Lot of times, in this connection, if we see, sometimes devotees are stuck in their devotional journey, They're stuck, they're saturated, they hit a plateau, and it's it's like uh, they're not going forward. They're just not going forward. It's because many of the times they are not receiving this guidance, right? If we are not guided, we are not accountable to the Siksha Guru, to the spiritual mentor, then it is difficult to make spiritual progress. It is difficult to make spiritual progress because we are not getting guidance. There, someone should be there. Recently, when we went on yatra, His Holiness Bhakti Vigna Vinashak Maharaj was telling a devotee was asking, I, I, I heard all the instructions. I know I know what is to be done. Everything is there, but how do I kind of take those steps to do those things, right? Um, Generally throughout the yatra, um, Maharaj was um, very, very calm, very that's the nature of the pure devotees. They're paradukha dukhi, they're very compassionate, very peaceful, very exemplary with what everything they do. Throughout, he was very, very calm, very, very full of compassion. But Maharaj, in response to this particular question, he was very firm. He was very firm. He said, you should have someone to whom you are accountable, someone who can pull you with your ear and tell you that this is not something you should be doing and this is what you should be doing. There should be some devotee who will be doing that for you. Said it in a very firm tone. So that was something we have never seen throughout the our interactions with Maharaj, but that was very strong. That was very firm. That is very true, right? A lot of times people have this kind of tendency that people ask devotees ask, right? Devotees ask for guidance, right? They ask for guidance, they ask for solutions, they know the problem. Sometimes the mentor or the Siksha Guru also has to step in to let them know what's going wrong, right? But sometimes maybe I'll get a little fortunate, or some more mercy is coming, that we understand what is the problem. We go and ask for guidance, and after seeking guidance, we don't follow that guidance, right? So recently I heard one nice Vaishnava. He was giving this wonderful example. uh, he had asked something of a devotee, and that devotee had actually said, okay, I have this, I'll give it to you. And then this devotee, while explaining, he was saying that, see, I have asked you for something. I have asked you and I have taken that. And if I don't use it, how would you feel? How would it be that I've asked you something and I have taken that, but I'm not using it? That is exactly what we do with the guidance that we receive from our spiritual mentors at times. We ask for guidance, they out of all the services they have, they very patiently they listen to our problems, they very patiently they take that effort to be there for us, to explain, to, to tell us, right, that this is what you should be doing. And at the end of the day, we are not ready to do that for various reasons. One is that we are not convinced, but in a stage where we are taking guidance. We should have that faith and belief that our mentor is our well-wisher. He or she is our eternal well-wisher and is guiding us for our own spiritual growth. So that kind of faith one has to develop to actually take that instruction to heart, to take that guidance to heart, right? So that has to be there. Otherwise, all the guidance will not help. And in this case, Srila Prabhupada is saying one cannot make progress. Okay, one without guidance, right? That and Srila Rup Goswami is saying one should accept a bona fide spiritual master. The spiritual master, a lot of times people also have this um, mm, lot of times devotees also think my spiritual master is somewhere in the another part of the world. My spiritual master is not here. How do I get guidance, right? How am I getting guidance? Actually, the spiritual master and the bona fide representative of the spiritual master are always constantly there to guide us. They are always there for us. The spiritual master might not be physically be present, but his instructions, his vani, actually can guide us. Personally, I've experienced it so many times that the spiritual master is not physically there, but when we hear to what the spiritual master says, when we listen to the lectures, it is actually we get lot of guidance, we get lot of instructions, guidance, and lot of inputs as to how to make spiritual progress. That is the case even with the spiritual mentor. Even with the spiritual mentor, um, our spiritual master is actually sending us help through the spiritual mentor. And if we are not accepting that help, then it is actually we are missing out on something when we don't take the help the spiritual master is sending. The spiritual master is sending help. He's always there, and he is actually sending help through the spiritual mentor, through fellow Vaishnavas, senior Vaishnavas, peers in Krishna consciousness. He's sending help. Instantly, he's sending help, and we have to be uh, we have to be intelligent enough. We have to put that endeavor to take that help. When we are guided, when we are told, we have to try to we have to try to do it, right? Not always the instructions, not always the guidance is very palatable, or not something that we'd like to accept, right? This is lifetimes of material conditioning, lifetimes of material condition. How can it just be, how can it be palatable? Something which puts you out of your comfort zone, something which needs you to change, something which will help you make spiritual progress. Not always it is palatable. The faith and the endeavor is very, very important. Endeavor to work on it, right? So, spiritual mentor saying every day get up at 4 o'clock, get up at 5 o'clock, attend the Mangalarti. Doesn't happen one day, maybe. Doesn't happen in 2 days, not in a week, not in a month. Keep at it. Keep doing it, keep doing it. Right? One day we will be there. With the instruction is the empowerment, and we can keep at it. Right? So, and Srila Prabhupada is saying, yeah, Srila Prabhupada is saying that King Amrisha is using all his senses, right? Everything in the service of the master of the senses, the Supreme Lord, right? And that is how King Amrisha is actually is setting an example. Such a glorious devotee King Amrisha is. Okay, yeah. We'll continue with the next verse. Evam sada karma kalapam atmana par pare adi यज्ञे भगवति अधोक्षजे सर्वात्मभावं विदवा विद विदधान् महिम इमां तन्निष्ठ विप्राभिहिता शशासः. Hare Krishna. Can someone read the translation and purport?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandat Pranam. Can I read Mataji? I will read.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you so much, Dandat Pranam.
Yes, Mataji. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In performing his prescribed duties as king, Maharaja Ambarisha always offered the results of his royal activities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is the enjoyer of everything and is beyond the perception of material senses. He certainly took advice from Brahmanas, who were faithful devotees of the Lord, and thus he ruled the planet Earth without difficulty. Purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 5.29, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Jnatva Mam Shantim Richati. People are very much anxious to live in peace and prosperity in this material world, and here in Bhagavad Gita, the peace formula is given. personally by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone should understand that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the ultimate proprietor of all the planets and is therefore the enjoyer of all activities, political, social, cultural, religious, economic, and so on. The Lord has given perfect advice in Bhagavad Gita, and Ambarish Maharaja, as the ideal executive head, ruled the entire world as a Vaishnava, taking advice from Vaishnava Brahmanas. The Shastras enjoined that even though a Brahmana may be well versed in the occupational Brahmanical duties and may be very learned in Vedic knowledge, he cannot give advice as a guru until he is a Vaishnava. सत्कर्म निपुनो विप्रो मंत्रतंत्र विशारदः अवैष्णवो गुरुर्न स्याद् वैष्णव स्वापचो गुरुः. Therefore, as indicated here by the words Tannishta Viprabitaha, Maharaja Ambarisha took advice from Brahmanas who were very pure devotees of the Lord. For ordinary Brahmanas who are merely learned scholars or experts in performing ritualistic ceremonies are not competent to give advice. In modern time, there are legislative assemblies whose members are authorized to make laws for the welfare of the state. But according to this description of the kingdom of Maharaja Ambarisha, the country or the world should be ruled by a chief executive whose advisor are all devotee Brahmanas. Such advisor or members of the legislative assembly should not be professional politicians, nor should they be selected by the ignorant public. Rather, they should be appointed by the king. When the king, the executive head of the state, is a devotee and he follows the instructions of the devotee Brahmanas in ruling the country, everyone will be peaceful and prosperous. When the king and his advisor are perfect devotees, nothing can be wrong in the state. All the citizens should become devotees of the Lord, and then their good character will automatically follow. Yes, yasti bhaktir bhagavatyakinchana sarvairgunaistatra samasate suraha harav abhaktasya kuto mahatguna manoratena sati davato bahihi. One who has unflinching devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigod. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualification that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Bhagavatam 5.18.12. Citizen under the guidance of a Krishna conscious king will become devotees, and then there will be no need to enact new laws every day to reform the way of life in the state. If the citizens are trained to become devotees, they will automatically become peaceful and honest, and if they are guided by a devoted king advised by devotees, the state will not be in material world but in the spiritual world. All the states of the world should therefore follow the ideal of the rule or administration of Maharaja Ambarisha as described here. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. So, more about how King Amrisha was executing his duties, right? So, it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord says, and all the results are offered to the Lord, right? So, whatever he was using his entire all his senses, everything in the service of the Lord, and all his duties that he was executing as a king, because all of us have our dharma and occupation that is there. He's as a king, all the results that were coming of his royal activities in his capacity as a king, all that he was offering to the Supreme Lord, because the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer, and he is actually beyond everything, beyond our material senses, beyond the possession of material senses. He is the enjoyer. So all the results he's been offering to the Supreme Lord. The other thing that he has been, Amrisha is he has been doing. We have seen he comes from the glorious lineage of Manu, and then and he has so much of opulence, he has so much everything, so much, and he is wonderful devotee. So much is that been described in Srimad Bhagavatam so far about King Amrisha. We know he had exemplary qualities, but that did not mean that he never took advice or guidance, right? He was taking advice from Brahmanas, and Srimad Bhagavatam is saying here clearly what is the qualification of those brahmanas or advisors that we should have, right? Those brahmanas that he was taking advice were also devotees of the Lord. Not only those brahmanas who are like very scholarly, and they knew how to do all the rituals. They knew like step by step, first this has to be offered, that has to be done, and this has to be done at this time, and all this, just not just the ritualistic or the vidhi part of the understanding, but those brahmanas who are devotees of the Lord, he took advice from them, right? So whom do we take advice from? Where is that guidance coming from? Whom are we taking advice from? Right? Whom are we taking inspiration from? Right? This is something we have to contemplate. Right? King Amrisha sets a fine example when he is actually taking advice from the Brahmanas who are actually devotees of the Lord. And as a result, because of this understanding, one, he is offering all the results to the Supreme Lord. Second, he is taking advice from Brahmanas who are devotees. As a consequence, he was able to rule the planet Earth without any difficulty. Imagine how many, in the beginning it says 7 islands and the large, he was the ruler of the entire planet. For such a person, he was able to rule very easily because he was offering the results to the Supreme Lord, and he was taking guidance from Brahmanas who are devotees, right? So sometimes when it is becoming difficult to execute our duties, it is good to reflect upon why it is happening. Is it because we are too attached to the results and we are not offering the results to the Supreme Lord? Or is it because we are taking wrong guidance and we are inspired by the wrong people? Right? So this is something to reflect upon when the execution of duties becomes difficult. Right? So that's something we have to contemplate, right? And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that the king should be a devotee, the advisors of the king should be devotees. Then the citizens also will become devotees, and it is overall a peaceful place to live and um, to continue practicing bhakti. But on the other hand, the current day scenario is very different. Srila Prabhupada says it should not be that way, that the politicians they should be politicians elected by people who are themselves not God conscious. They themselves are ignorant. Since they are not God conscious, the kind of people who are elected or chosen are wrong. And these are the kind of people who are ruling, right? So then there is always conflict of interest. It's because the politician has some understanding which is not the right understanding, either from the right advisors or the right mentors, and so the politician has some interest, and projects are taken or done executed based on that interest. Similarly, in the society also, each one has a conflicting interest. Each one has a conflicting interest, and there is no peace in that kind of community, because each one is thinking only about oneself and does not really think about does not have this concept that everyone is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So when one thinks only about oneself, the interests will be conflicting, because I am thinking only about what is beneficial for me, right? Okay, right. I need the road to go from this point to this point, because every day I need to take this road, right? I'm not thinking about the other person who is maybe who is affected by bringing that road, or it is affecting the nature by bringing about that road. So it's always the decisions are made by those people who don't have the right guidance, and who are not thinking for from the right don't have the right thinking and thought process, right? So that is why it is important for the king to be God conscious, the ruler to be God conscious, the advisors to be God conscious, and also then the citizens also will become God conscious, or they will become devotees, right? And this is how King Amrisha was ruling, and uh, this is how he sets an example of how the administration and governance should be, right? So for anyone in leadership position, it is important to have to practice those principles uh, based on Krishna consciousness. Take right advice from someone who is rooted in Krishna consciousness, who has understanding, whose advice will be based on the scriptural learning and Guru Shastra, and also then the people who are subordinates, they also will develop this consciousness wherein everyone has a common interest instead of having conflicting interests, in, and then there is harmony, right, together as a group. Next verse. Ijayashvamedhair adiyajnam ishwaram महाविभूतियो पचितंगा दक्षिणै ततैर्वशिष्टासित गौतमादिभिः धन्वनि अभिश्रुतम् असौ सरस्वतीम्. Can someone read the translation and purport?
Mataji, can I read if anyone?
Sure,
Yes,
Mataji, please continue.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mataji. Translation. In desert countries where there flowed the river Saraswati, where the flowed the river Saraswati, Maharaj Ambarisha performed great sacrifices like the Ashwamedha Yajna and thus satisfies the master of all yajnas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such sacrifices were performed with great opulence and suitable paraphernalia and with the contribution of dakshina to the Brahmanas, who were supervised by great personalities like Vasishtha, Asita, and Gautama, representing the king, the performer of the sacrifices. Purport. When one performs ritualistic sacrifices as prescribed in the Vedas, one need expert brahmanas known as Yagnika brahmanas. In Kali Yuga, however, there is a scarcity of such brahmanas. Therefore, in Kali Yuga, the sacrifice recommended in Shastra in Sankirtana Yajna, Yajnaihi Sankirtana Prayer Yajantihi Sumedasaha. Instead of spending money unnecessarily on performing yajnas impossible to perform in this age of Kali because of scarcity of Yajnaika Brahmanas, one who is intelligent performs Sankirtana Yajna without properly performed yajnas to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There will be scarcity of rain. Yajnat bhavati parjanyaha. Therefore, the performance of yajna is essential. Without yajna, there will be a scarcity of rain, and because of this scarcity, no food grains will be produced, and there will be famines. In the duty of the king, therefore, to perform different types of yajnas, such as the Ashwamedha yajna, to maintain the production of food grains, annad bhavanti bhutani. Without food grains, both men and animal will starve. Therefore, yajna is necessary for the state to perform, because by yajna, the people in general, where Mataji? The people in general will be fed sumptuously. The Brahmanas and Yajnaika priests should be sufficiently paid for their expert service. This payment is called Dakshina. Ambarisha Maharaja, as the head of the state, performed all these yajnas through great personalities like Vasishtha, Gautama, and Asita. Personally, however, he was engaged in devotional service as mentioned before, Savai Manak Krishna Padara Vindayoho. The king or head of state must see that things go on well under proper guidance, and he must be an ideal devotee as exemplified by Ambarish Maharaja. It is the duty of the king to see that food grains are produced even in desert countries, what to speak of elsewhere. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mother. Hare Krishna. So, in desert region where there is rainfall is scanty, and though there is river Saraswati, it is seen that Maharaj Amrish have to for the welfare of the citizens, because unless there is rainfall, there will be the crops cannot grow, and when the crops does not grow, there will be shortage of grains. There could be famines and things like that. So Maharaj Amrisha also performed yajnas to so that the rains come about timely, and then there is prosperity, right? And to do the yajna, he has called some exemplary brahmanas, yagnika brahmanas like Vashishta, Sita, and Gautama. Actually, it is it is very difficult in this age. Srila Prabhupada says, in this age, and it's so very difficult to find such qualified brahmanas. It is so very difficult, and and during this time, that is why in this time of the yuga, the Kali Yuga, the Sankirtan Yagya is the form of sacrifice, right? The Harinam Sankirtan is the highest form of sacrifice, and Srila Prabhupada was quoting this very often. One time there was a severe drought in the state of Andhra Pradesh, right? And there was drought, and then Srila Prabhupada said, he told, do Sankirtan Yagya, and they did public Harinam Sankirtan, public Harinam Sankirtan, and the Sankirtan went on, and then it started raining. Next day in the newspapers, everyone, it was quoted. They said the Hare Krishnas brought rain, right? So that is how it is. It is clearly we can understand that for this age, Harinam Sankirtan is the yagya, because we don't have many qualified brahmanas. Um, Recently, on Gita Jayanti, one devotee was looking forward to do yagya, right? And for a long time, we could not find any Brahmana, qualified Brahmana, Vaishnava to do it. Fortunately, we found His Grace Murlidhar Govind Prabhuji, and Prabhuji conducted the yagya so well. He's so well trained. He explained clearly how why each step of the yagya is being done and what is being done. He explained clearly, and he did yagya. But as with our experience, it is very difficult to find such qualified yagnika brahmanas, right? So Prabhuji is trained from JEV, and how well he does how well he is carrying out the yagya is very inspiring. But in absence of all that, Sankirtan Yagya is the Yuga Dharma, and that actually can bring about welfare, prosperity, and it can actually uh, it can actually do all good for the mankind. So we should be constantly engaged in the Harinam Sankirtana. Right? When King Amrisha, as required as his duty as a king, he was doing Ashwamedh Yagya for the welfare of his citizens. यस्य क्रतुषु गिर्वना सदस्या ऋत्विजोजना तुल्यरूपाश्च निमेषा व्यादृष्ट्यन्त सुवासः. Yeah, can someone read the translation?
Mataji, if no one is reading, shall I read?
Please, Mataji, thank you.
Translation. In the sacrifice arranged by Maharaja Ambarisha, the members of the assembly and the priests, especially Hota, Udgata, Brahma, and Advaryu, were gorgeously dressed, and they all looked exactly like demigods. They eagerly saw to the proper performance of the yajna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So, So further description is there on the sacrifice of that is done by King Amrisha, right? So how the priests themselves looked very opulent in the sacrifice. They were dressed very gorgeously, and they themselves were looking like the demigods, like the devatas. They looked so opulent, and such kind of priests, they were engaged in performing the yagya, and they were overseeing the yagya. They were performing the yagya in such a way that it is to be done properly, right? So that such kind of supervision is going on, such kind of um, um, efforts are being put in carrying out this yagya. स्वर्गो न प्रार्थितो यस्य मनुजैरमरा प्रिया चिन्वद्भिः उपगायद्भिः उत्तमश्लोकचेष्टितम्. Can someone read the translation and purport?
I will read, Mataji.
Sure, Mataji, thank you.
The citizens of the state of Maharaja Ambarisha was accustomed to chanting and hearing about the glorious activities of the personality of Godhead. Thus, they never aspired to be elevated to the heavenly planets, which are extremely dear even to the demigods. Purport. A pure devotee who has been trained in the practice of chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord and his fame, qualities, form, paraphernalia, and so on is never interested in elevation to the heavenly planets, even though such places are extremely dear even to the demigods. Narayana Parasarve Narayana Parasarve Na Kutaschana Bibhyati सर्वापवर्ग नरकेष्वपि तुल्यार्थदर्शिनः. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, never fear any condition of life. The heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same to a devotee. Bhagavatam 6.17.28. A devotee is always situated in the spiritual world. Therefore, he does not desire anything. He is known as akama or desireless because he has nothing to desire except to render devotional loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because Maharaj Ambarisha was most exalted devotee of the Lord, he trained his subject in such a way that the citizen in his state were not interested in any material, including even the happiness of the heavenly planets. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. So now the result of being such a glorious king, right? Such a glorious leader is we can see that the consequence, the result of that in the citizens of the state that King Maharaj Amrisha ruled. So it is said, Bhagavad Gita said, Yad Yad Acharate Shrestha. So when you have such a glorious leader, that the effect of that inspiration is actually percolating down, and and the activities the king was constantly engaging, the citizens were also they got used to uh, constantly hearing, regularly hearing about, hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord, right? So they were constantly engaged in these activities, and since they were engaged in these activities, even they never felt the need to aspire for heavenly planets, right? So a lot of times people do something, and then as a result they get this boon, which commonly is heard as Swarga Praptirastu, right? Which is very common. And then someone dies, they said Swarganik Veliperu. They went to heaven, left, and on the communication they said, so and so my father, my mother, so and so is left to heavenly abode, right? So these are the aspirations of non-devotees to actually, even the demigods actually are somewhere in mixed devotion, right? So they also have these aspirations of being elevated to the heavenly planets, right? But the citizens of the state of King Amrisha, they were so elevated beings because they were constantly hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. So how does one elevate one's consciousness? How does one elevate oneself to pure devotional service? By constantly hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord, chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. And then one actually understands what is important, what is of the highest value, and what is very important. Um, Reading this purport actually, um, see the people, those devotees who have this kind of consciousness, they don't particularly aspire for liberation. For them, it is the service of the Lord wherever they are, right? Hell, it can be hell, it can be heaven, it can be anywhere else. It can be the spiritual world. Everything is like the same, because they are constantly engaged in the hearing of the glories of the Lord, chanting the glories of the Lord. That everywhere they are in the consciousness of the spiritual world. Their consciousness is there, which makes everything around them and everything about them like in the spiritual world. They have become like spiritual, right? I Many years ago, when um when I maybe started very early days of my Krishna conscious journey, I heard Satyadevata Prabhuji say, it was in the satsang, devotees were discussing about the Lord's pastimes. Everyone honored prasadam, everyone were discussing, and Prabhuji said, if Goloka feels like this, then why do we have to go to Goloka? It is always so nice to be with devotees, speak constantly the glories of the Lord, and engage in devotional service. Then why should we kind of specifically aspire to be liberated, or specifically aspire to go to Goloka? That actually came as a great surprise to me, because um, I um, I was even more maybe innocent, or even more like very basic understanding I had, even in philosophy, that I thought Goloka, going to Goloka, Prabhupada says so many times, going to Goloka, going back to Godhead, going to Goloka, getting liberated, because there's four problems, and then there is threefold miseries. All this we have to just go to Goloka. This is what I had, this conception. But when Prabhuji said, I felt it was a great realization that Prabhuji shared. That is true. That is the nature of devotees. That wherever they are, since their activities and their consciousness is of Goloka consciousness, they might not need to be present physically in Goloka, right? So their consciousness is such elevated consciousness, and they derive happiness by engaging in the service of the Lord, being with devotees, constantly chanting the glories of the Lord, hearing about the Lord. So it is actually it is a very spiritual kind of conception, right? So that is how the we can see the citizens of King Amrisha are there, that they don't know need to really go to heaven to experience that opulence or happiness from that opulence of the heavenly planets. They don't need that, because they're already experiencing transcendental bliss by practicing devotional service, right? That is how it is for them, right? Mhm. समवर्धयन्ति यत्कामा स्वराज्य परिभावितः दुर्लभानापि सिद्धानां मुकुन्दं हृदि पश्यता. Can someone read the translation? Someone read the translation purpose, please.
I get it.
Yeah,
Those who are
Raghunandan.
situated,
Yes, Prabhuji, please.
Mataji, am I
You're audible, Prabhuji,
those,
please. Yeah, thank you. Prabhuji, I'm able to hear you.
those,
Please read.
okay.
Hare Krishna.
Those who are situated with the transcendental happiness of rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead are uninterested even in the achievements of great mystics. For such achievements do not enhance the transcendental bliss felt by a devotee who always thinks of Krishna within the core of his heart. Purport. A pure devotee is uninterested not only in elevation to the higher planetary system, but even to the perfections of mystic yoga. Real perfection is devotional service. The happiness derived from merging impersonal Brahman and the happiness derived from the eight perfections of mystic yoga, Anima, Lagima, Prapti, and so on, do not give any pleasure to the devotee as stated by Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. Kaivalyam Nara Kayate Tridashapur Akasha Puspayate Durdantendriya Kalasalpa Patali Pratakta Damstrayate Vishwam Purna Sukayate Vidhi Mahendra Dischakitayate Yatkarunya Kataksha Vaibhava Patam Tam Gaurame Vastumaha Chaitanya Chandramrita 5. When a devotee has achieved the position of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord through mercy of Lord Chaitanya, he thinks the impersonal Brahman to be no better than hell, and he regards material happiness in the heavenly planets to be like a will o' the wisp. As far as perfection of mystic powers is concerned, a devotee compares it to a venomous snake with no teeth. A mystic yogi is especially concerned with controlling the senses. But because the senses of a devotee are engaged in the service of the Lord, Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate, there is no need for separate control of the senses. For those who are materially engaged, control of the senses is required. But the devotee's senses are all engaged in the service of the Lord, which means that they are already controlled. Param Drishtwani Vartate Bhagavad Gita 259. A devotee's senses are not attracted by material enjoyment. And even though the material world is full of misery, the devotee considers this material world to also be spiritual because everything is engaged in the service of the Lord. The difference between the spiritual world and material world is the mentality of service. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchyate. When there is no mentality of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's activities are material. Prapanchikataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastunaha mumukshubhihi parityago vairagyam falgu katyate. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-2-6. That which is engaged in the service of the Lord is not material, and nothing thus engaged should be given up. In the construction of a higher skyscraper and the construction of a temple, there may be the same enthusiasm, but the endeavors are different. For one is material and the other is spiritual. Spiritual activity should not be confused with material activities and given up. Nothing connected with Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is material. A devotee who considers all this is always situated in spiritual activity, and therefore he is no longer attracted by material activities. Param Drishtwani. Wonderful purport.
Very good.
Beautiful.
So, yeah. So, so what are the things that people in this world are aspiring in general? So, they're aspiring elevation to heavenly planets. The mystic yogis are actually trying to gain powers, right? Different siddhis and all, like through mystic yoga, anima, lagima, prapti, and so on, right? And these are the things. Then all these things that the people of this world are desiring, these for a devotee is actually something the devotee is not aspiring. And Srila Prabhupada says that uh, that the devotees are seeing it as of very low value, right? And they do not uh, give they do not give the happiness or bliss which actually is obtained by a devotee by actually serving the Lord, and who is always thinking of the Lord, who is in the service of the Lord. The happiness the devotee experiences, that kind of happiness is not there with the other things like elevation to the heavenly planets or having the mystic yogic powers and all. And devotees are sometimes seeing this as a will-o-wisp. Will-o-wisp is something like a faint light or something which is not an achievable goal, which is not a desirable goal. Not achievable, but yeah, it's not a desirable goal. So the heavenly planets is not a desirable goal for the devotees, right? And the mystic yoga is like venomous snake without any teeth, right? That also is not beneficial for a devotee, right? And for the devotee, a lot of times yogis and lot of people they practice lot of things just to control mind. But that again is again happening for the devotee when they're engaging the mind in thinking of the Lord, and coming to all the material wealth, opulence, whatever is there, that is used in the service of the Lord, that also becomes spiritual, right? So everything is spiritual for the devotee, and that is what the devotee does, and that is where the transcendental bliss or happiness is there. And rest all seems very insignificant, not something desirable for a devotee, right? The devotee is always engaged in something higher. All their activities and their desires are in the something higher and in connection with the Supreme Lord, right? That is how they are experiencing the happiness and transcendental bliss in devotional service, right? Saitam bhakti yogena tapo yuktena pativa swadharmena harim prinan sarvan kaman sanayirjaho. Can someone read the translation in Prabhupada?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I'll read.
Sure, Mataji, thank you.
In Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The king of this planet, Maharaj Ambarisha, thus performed devotional service to the Lord, and in this endeavor practiced severe austerity, always satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his constitutional activities. He gradually gave up all material desires. Purport. Severe austerities in the practice of devotional services are of many varieties. For example, in worshipping the deity in the temple, there are certainly laborious activities. Shri Vigraha Aradhana Nityanana Shringara Tan Mandira Marchanadau. One must decorate the deity, cleanse the temple, bring the water from Ganges and Yamuna, continue to routine, perform arti many times, prepare first class food for the deity, prepare dresses, and so on. In this way, one must constantly be engaged in various activities, and the hard labor involved is certainly an austerity. Similarly, the hard labor involved in preaching, preparing literature, preaching to atheistic men, and distributing literature door to door is, of course, an austerity. Tapo yuktena. Tapa divyam putraka. Such austerity is necessary. Yena sattvam shuddhayet. By such austerity in devotional service, one is purified of material existence. Kaman shanair jaho. Indeed, such austerity leads one to the constitutional position of devotional service. In this way, one can give up material desires, and as soon as one is freed from material desires, he is free from the repetition of birth and death, old age and disease.
Hare Krishna. So this is the second verse in this section wherein it is said how to give up material desires, right? So it is so whatever services one is executing, those services come with certain amount of difficulty, some kind of difficulty, or it involves austerity. And undergoing these austerities in the service of the Lord, the hardships in the service of the Lord, the inconveniences in the service of the Lord, right? Going out of our comfort zones, putting a lot of effort physically, mentally, and putting our resources, our abilities in the service of the Lord. All this actually can purify us, purify our existence, right? And as the purification happens, one can gradually give up all the material desires. And when one gets freed from the material desires, one breaks the cycle of repeated birth, death, old age, and disease. Right? So this is the second verse. The first thing we heard a while ago was the service and engagement of all the senses and everything in the service of the Lord. The second thing is the austerities involved in the service. These can actually free up us from our material desires. Okay, we'll proceed. गृहेषु दारेषु सुतेषु बन्धुषु द्विपोत्तमस्यादन याजिवस्तुषु अक्षया रत्नाभरणा द्विष अनन्तकोशेष्व अकरोत् मतिम्. Yeah, can somebody read the translation and purpose?
Can I try, Mataji?
Please, Prabhuji, thank you.
This is 27.
That's right,
Shloka.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Translation purport by Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Translation. Maharaj Ambarisha gave up all attachment to household affairs, wives, children, friends, and relatives, to the best of powerful elephants, to beautiful chariots, carts, horses, and inexhaustible jewels, and to ornaments, garments, and an inexhaustible treasury. He gave up attachment to all of them, regarding them as temporary and material. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Purport. Continue the purport, Mataji. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Anasaktiya Vishayan Yadarham Upajayantaha. Material possession can be accepted as far as they can be used in devotional service. Anukulyena Krishnanuselanam Anukulyasya Sankalpaha Pratikulyasya Varjanam. In preaching, many things considered material are needed. A devotee should not have any attachment for material involvements as house, wife, children, friends, and cars. Maharaja Ambarisha, for example, had all such things, but he was not attached to them. This is effect of bhakti yoga. Bhaktik para paresanubhavo viraktarasyastracha. Bhagavatam 11.2.42. One who is advanced in devotional service has no attachment for material things for sense enjoyment, but for preaching, to spread the glories of the Lord. He accepts such things without attachment. Anasaktya Vishayan Yadarha Mupajayantaha. Everything can be used to the extent that it can be engaged in Krishna's service. Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. So, Srimad Bhagavatam is telling that what all King Amrisha actually uh, gave up attachment on, right? So these are wonderful things. Further off, actually, they say King Amrisha had a wife who was as qualified as him, right? The children, the friends, relatives, best of elephants, chariots, everything, cards, everything, jewels, opulence, everything he gave up attachment to, because it's temporary and material. But for practicing devotee, for us, like us, and Maharaj Amrisha, we also saw that earlier he used some of the opulence actually in conducting yagya, so that it is for the welfare of his citizens. Like that, for us also, whatever is there, whatever is favorable for bhakti, and whatever is favorable for our devotional service, preaching, and whatever is favorable for helping others advance in Krishna consciousness, we should use that, though it might be material, and we can use that in the service of the Lord, but never with an attachment, right? So that should not be the kind of perception, or the kind of um, how we should look at all the material opulences, as being attached to them, right? And we even get attached to them when we are using them for our own sense enjoyment, instead of using in the service of the Lord, right? So we should not have that kind of attachment to material possessions, and everything should be used in the service of the Lord, and accept only as much as that we can see as being used in the service of the Lord. Right. So my spiritual master, he was pre-med student at University of Buffalo, and in the US. And when he moved into the Brahmachari ashram, he gave up on his education, and he moved into the Brahmachari ashram. Um, he had practically given up everything except for what was beneficial. One day he had taken his very expensive car for book distribution, and apparently that met with an accident. The car met with an accident, and said, "Okay, this was something I was attached to, and Krishna has decided to take this also." So our attachment, where it is like. Where it can be used in the service of the Lord, we can use everything material in the service of Lord and accept as much as needed. Right? That is what Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, so that we don't get attached to it. The attachment is a very difficult thing, right? So how do we give up those attachments? Use it for the right reason, and you have as much as just needed. Okay. Tasmada tasm tasmaadaधरिश्चक्रम् प्रत्यानिकाभयावहम् एकान्तभक्तिभावेन प्रीतो भक्ताभिरक्षणम्. Can somebody read the translation and purport?
I'll read Mataji. Translation. Being very pleased by the unalloyed devotion of Maharaj Ambarisha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gave the king his disc, which is fearful to enemies and which always protects the devotees from enemies and adversities. Purport. A devotee being always engaged in the service of Lord may not be expert in self-defense, but because a devotee fully depends on the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is always sure of protection by the Lord. Prahlad Maharaj said, Naivo dvije para duratyaya vaitaranyas tvadvirya gayana mahamrita magna chittaha. A devotee is always merged in the ocean of transcendental bliss by rendering service to the Lord. Therefore, he is not at all afraid of any adverse situation in the material world. The Lord also promises, Kaunteya pratijanati, Name bhakta pranasyati. O Arjuna, you may declare to the world that the devotees of the Lord are never vanquished. Bhagavad Gita 9.31. To the protection of the devotees, Krishna's disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, is always ready. This disc is extremely fearful to the non-devotees. Pratyanika Bhayavaham. Therefore, although Maharaj Ambarisha was fully engaged in devotional service, his kingdom was free of all fear of adversity. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, for such a great devotee, the Lord actually gives his Sudarshan Chakra as a protection. The Lord is always protecting his devotees. The devotee might not be thinking of his protection or his anything that he might need, but the Lord is always there to provide, right? And the Sudarshan Chakra is actually what the demons fear, what everyone fears. But for the devotees, it is something which is very assuring, something which protects them, right? And King Amrisha, uh, because the Lord also ensured that there's no kind of adversity or anything to be afraid of, because he gives his Sudarshan Chakra to King Amrisha. Okay. आरिराधायुष्यो कृष्णं महिष्यातुल्यशिलाय युक्तसंवत्सरं वीरो दधारा द्वादशी व्रतम्. Yeah, can someone read the translation purport?
Can I try again, Mataji?
Please, Prabhuji, thank you.
29th shloka. Hare Krishna, translation purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. To
Jai.
worship Lord Krishna, Maharaj Ambarish, along with his queen, who was equally qualified, observed the vow of Ekadashi and Dwadasi for 1 year. Purport. Hare Krishna. To 20. To
Yes, Prabhuji.
observe, to observe Ekadasi Vrata and Dvadas Vrata means to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those interested in advancing in Krishna consciousness must observe Ekadash Vrata regularly. Maharaj Ambarisha's queen was equally as qualified as the king. Therefore, it was possible for Maharaj Ambarisha to engage his life in household affairs. In this regard, the word Tulya Silaya is very significant. Unless a wife is equally as qualified as her husband, household affairs are very difficult to continue. Chanakya Pandita advises that a person in such a situation should immediately give up household life and become vanaprastha or sannyasi. So, Mata yas gruhe nasti bharya cha priyavadini aranyam tena gantavyam yadharanyam tada gruham. A person who has no mother at home and whose wife is not agreeable with him should immediately go away to the forest, because human life is meant for spiritual advancement only. One's wife must be helpful in this endeavor. Otherwise, there is no need of household life. Hare Krishna. Very powerful
Hare
mother.
Krishna. Yes, Rohit, very difficult waters, dangerous waters. So, so here we see King Amrisha is actually endeavoring for the Ekadashi Vrata and Dvadashi Vrata. So, Srila Prabhupada says, along with his wife, qualified wife, he is endeavoring for this Vrata. And Prabhupada says that Ekadashi Vrata is very helpful for those who seek spiritual advancement, right? So, that is why it is very important for us to observe Ekadashi Vrata according to one's health and situation, to follow the Vrata either nirjala or with some kind of ekadashi prasadam, fruits, etc. So that is very important. And King Amrisha, the other thing that is being mentioned is the support King Amrisha got from his wife. So it's for such a great devotee. Also, his wife was very qualified and she was very supportive, right? Srila Prabhupada quotes from Chanakya, and he says that if one does not have mother at home, mother is generally the well-wisher, and a wife who is not favorable, then the house becomes very difficult place to be in. It is a constant place of discomfort, and it's a constant place of sadness, right? More than how house should be. How should a home be? Should be filled of laughter, happiness, and the activities should be centered around Krishna consciousness, around the Supreme Lord. But for someone who's not getting enough support at home, because mother is not at home and wife is also not agreeable, it is said, Chanakya is saying better to go to the forest or take vanaprastha or sannyasa, right? In our case, we have to see this as uh, in a spouse who is not favorable to the Krishna to spiritual advancement or Krishna consciousness is definitely of concern, right? Because this is a very precious human life, and we are set out on making best out of it by making spiritual advancement. And if your spouse or is not favorable to that, that is something that should not happen, right? So it is by the endeavor of King Amrisha and his qualified wife that they took upon this Ekadashi Vrata, right? And what happens while they are on this Vrata and towards the end? We'll just read the next few verses. We'll read till verse number 31. Okay. व्रतान्ते कार्तिके मासि त्रिरात्रं समुपोषिता स्नाता कदाचित् कालिन्द्यां हरिं मधुवने अर्चयत्. Yeah, can someone read the translation?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Translation by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. In the
Jai.
month of Kartika, after observing that for 1 year, after observing a fast for 3 nights, and after
Mhm.
bathing in the Yamuna, Maharaj Ambarisha worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, in Madhuvana. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So this Ekadashi Vrata, how King Amrisha followed. He followed Ekadashi Vrata for 1 year completely, and 3 nights he was fasting, and then he took bath in Yamuna river, and he wanted to worship the Lord at Madhuvana, right? So this is how he was carrying out his Ekadashi Vrata. And what happens next, we'll see. Right. So the chapter itself is titled as Durvasa Muni, King Amrisha was offended by Durvasa Muni, right? So how does the next section will go in this direction, wherein we understand the interaction between Durvasa Muni and King Amrisha. Okay, we'll read these set of verses. महाभिषेकविधिना सर्वोपास्कारसम्पदा अभिषयम्बारकल्पैर्गन्धमालैरर्हनादिभिः तद्गतं ततान्तरभावेन पूजयामाश केशवम् ब्राह्मणां च महाभागान् सिद्धार्थानपि भक्तितः. Can someone read the translation?
Hare Krishna Mataji. I will read the
Hare Krishna,
translation.
Mataji. Thank you.
Yes, Mataji. Following the regulative principles of Mahabhisheka, Maharaj Ambarisha performed the bathing ceremony for the deity of Lord Krishna with all paraphernalia, and then he dressed the deity with fine clothing, ornaments, fragrant flower garlands, and other paraphernalia for worship of the Lord. With attention and devotion, he worshipped Krishna and all the greatly fortunate Brahmanas who were free from material desires. Thank you, Mataji. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
So further, it is these two verses are describing that how King Amrisha actually worshipped his deity. So King Amrisha he had his deity of Lord Krishna. So he was worshipping with all the paraphernalia, how he bathed the deity, he dressed the deity with wonderful clothes, ornaments, and he offered fragrant flower garlands, and he had all the paraphernalia to worship the Lord, and with lot of attention and a lot of devotion he was worshipping, and this actually this is actually wonderful, wonderfully how after following his vrata he is actually demonstrating his worship, and how he was actually uh, carrying out his devotional service, right? So that is what we can understand from these verses. We will end here. More we will hear in the coming verses on how Durvas Muni comes and what were the interactions between them, and how does actually Durvasa Muni offend King Amrisha, while he might not have taken offense to it, but the Sudarshan Chakra that was gifted by the Lord was really after Durvas Muni, and then no one could actually save Durvas Muni from that, from what he has, uh, for the attitude and the kind of behavior he had towards King Amrisha. He had sought refuge from Brahma, Lord Shiva, and finally the Supreme Lord himself, until he goes again to King Amrisha to seek forgiveness. And these are the glories of King Amrisha, and such a glorious devotee that the Lord is protecting, and the Lord uh, is reciprocating with by protecting him against the demons sent by Durvasa Muni and protecting him. And the Lord says that if you have committed offense to my devotee, then I cannot give you refuge. I cannot give you shelter, and that is a glory of a devotee. The Lord is very very particular when it comes to his devotees, right? So he might be very merciful, very forgiving to the offenses we might do knowingly, unknowingly against him, but one should be very, very cautious against the offenses committed to the devotees of the Lord. Yeah. Yeah. If there are any questions, we can take the questions. Otherwise, close to 9. I'm very sorry. It took a lot of time today. I couldn't probably plan properly, but yeah. If there are any questions, we can just discuss questions, discussions, anything that anyone would like to say.
Nice class, Mataji. Very powerful class.
Kind words. Thank you, Prabhuji. That is what Srimad Bhagavatam has to say about devotional service, about King Amrisha. Yeah.
Yeah. Liberation. That's the title, right, for this book.
Canto.
For
Yeah.
Canto. Yeah.
How with
Yeah.
everything, still it is possible to get liberation.
Yeah.
One need not give up or lose everything, or think that without anything only liberation is possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. Very nice. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Anyone has any questions?
Thank you so much
Yes.
for the wonderful session, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for joining, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful class.
Thank you so much for joining, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji, for taking.
Hare Krishna.
Thank
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Mataji, for the opportunity. Yeah.
I'll end the session here, Mataji.
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.